look at you.
Okay.
I have to talk about my buddy Steve, and I call him my buddy because we bonded on so many things. Like when I first met him, it was on the Super Bowl because Janice hadn't moved here yet, and it was the Super Bowl, and Steve was here, and she was still back in the East Coast. She goes, "Would you take care of Steve on the Super Bowl?" Because Carolina was playing. And I'm like, they're playing the Denver Broncos. And I'm a big Denver Broncos fan. And they were winning. The Broncos were winning. I'm like, oh God, here's Steve. His team is losing. And I don't, I'm a little enthusiastic person. I'm like, wow, like all the time. And I'm like, Broncos. I'm trying not to cheer for the Broncos because I didn't want them to feel bad because we were just kind of meeting each other. And I was very polite, and that was the last time I was polite. We had so much fun watching games, the World Series, all the playoffs. I love to talk to Steve about sports, and I would say something, and he would come in with something amazing about somebody he met in Cincinnati, and then we talked about, politics we talked about, and movies. Oh my gosh. Because Janice mentioned that he was a screenplay writer. Well, the company I work for, we make films. And so I always loved giving Steve one of our scripts, and I'd show him all these rough cuts, and he'd give us back our comments. And the directors of our movie, he just loved getting comments, and he helped us so much. And one time I needed a reference, and I put Steve, and I used Steve. I go, Steve Fletcher, screenplay writer. And that was so fun. I had to tell Steve. Steve goes, "You did what?" I go, "You're a screenplay writer." And so it was fun showing him our films, getting his comments. And then, oh my God, the Academy Awards. Like we would fill out our ballot. We would talk for hours about the movies. One time, the four of us were watching a movie. It was 1917. And the director had done something really innovative with the camera. There were very few edits. He'd follow the camera all around. Steve and I, did you see that shot? Oh my God, did you see they got all the way from the battlefield? And Krishna and Janice were like, oh my God, here they go again. So we were always having all these wonderful, intense conversations. And Steve was so multifaceted. And we'd talk about some movie, and then he'd send me a amazing YouTube of behind the scenes of the director, how he made the movie. And I always loved that because it was exactly what I wanted to know. We shared that so much. But really the music, like Krishna said at the beginning when we watched The Star Being Born, music was really a big conversation that we had. One time Steve asked me, what are your top 10 most favorite, not your favorite albums, the albums that most influenced you? And I'm like, oh my God, a top 10? I can't possibly do a top 10. That conversation lasted at least 5 years, 5-6 years. And I knew his top 10 by heart, and then he said knew mine, and every once in a while he'd say, that's not my top 10. I go, I know. But it was so fun, and I learned a lot about Steve doing that list because it was the most influential. And he said, when his parents got divorced, it was tough for Steve. His dad moved away, he missed his dad, and he said, I moved into the basement of our house because I wanted to be alone, and he was listening to this underground radio station that he talked about, and listening, it was 1968, 1969, which both of us both agreed, the best years of music ever. Sorry, Dia, and all you young people. But he would listen to all this music. And then his middle school teacher kind of realized, wow, this guy is so deep and the music really relates with him. He gave him 2 albums. One of the albums was the Moody Blues, Children's Children, Children, which was a big influence. And another one was Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the one that has Lucky Man on it. And so Lucky Man was on one of his top 20 songs. But we got to 20 and beyond 10. But on the children's children, because Moody Blues was really important for me too, but I was 4 years older than Steve. So for me, it was Days of Future Past, which had Nights in White Satin. And so the conversation about high school kids being influenced by music, it was wonderful. But on the album Children's Children, I just checked it. The songs on there are like Eyes of a Child, Higher and Higher, and the other one, Watching and Waiting. And that song, Steve sang here. I was just like, you know, I know how much that album meant to him, and he sang it. It was like 50 years later or something. So music was so important. But you know, I think as Steve went through this, becoming a star in this very backyard, like Krishna mentioned, I think the fun for us was watching Steve, but the fun was watching Janice watch Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, she's like, he's playing guitar. He's like, he's singing Simon and Garfunkel. He's now Garfunkel with these incredible harmonies with Jim that came from heaven. I don't know where it came from. And every time Steve played this one song, Let It Be Me, the Everly Brothers, I mean, he turned into one of the Everly Brothers. He would always dedicate that song to Janice. And so we would cry watching Janice, cry watching Steve, because it was so beautiful. You know, their love was just so, they supported each other and loved each other so much. It was just there. And you know, that song, Let It Be Me, you know, the words, I bless the day I found you. I want to stay around you. And so I beg you, let it be me. Each time we meet, love, I find complete love. Without your sweet love, what would life be? And we were just surrounded with love when he would sing that. And there it is, you can see the video of him in that living room video, but it'll also be available later, I think, for all of us to watch. But watching them together, it was just about love. And today we're celebrating Steve, so I think we're celebrating the love Janice and Steve and all of us had for each of them, and really for each other too.